Hello, this is Algernon and Jack. Welcome to Dead Writers Theatre Collective's production of Importance of Being Earnest. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you to please, and that all sweeties, don't talk unless you have something incredibly intelligent to say, and please turn off your cell phones. I hate people who don't turn off their cell phones. It's so silly of them. Please, enjoy the show, and thank you for coming.
Polite to listen.
I'm sorry for that. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, do you want the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Ooh. By the way, I see from your book that on last Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that in a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage really so demoralizing as that?
It is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the law orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Oh. How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure. Eating as usual, I see, Algernon.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
Are people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Well, naturally you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, it's all very well. But I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way that Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
Oh, I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It's very romantic to be in love. There's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why one only accepted? One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget that.
There's no doubt about that, dear Alger. The divorce courts were specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all the time.
It's quite a different matter. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. Bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellows. Eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
In the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I didn't give my consent.
Your consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Alger, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Now bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I haven't been more than usually hard up.
There is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I see that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
It is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
You're wrong.
Yes, charming young lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Alger.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives in Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that truly an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give it back my cigarette case!
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. And there is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. Why not, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest? You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest. If ever you attempt to deny it to me, or Gwendolyn, or anybody else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes. But that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Come, old boy. You'd much better have the thing out at once.
My dear Alger, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me the whole thing. I may mention I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret bunburyist. And I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me of why you were Ernest in town, Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge for Admiral Governess Miss Prison.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
Well, I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Alger, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Alger, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either. The modern literature, a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave it to the people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a bunburyist. You're the most advanced bunburyist I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you'd like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight. I really have been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, you're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday. Once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family. Sit down with either no woman at all or 2. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar. She always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It's not very pleasant. Indeed, it's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. So bad. Simply washing one's clean linen in public. Now that I know you to be a confirmed bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. But if you ever do get married, it seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury is a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, and she is the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know, Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
And that the happy English home is proved in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear boy, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of your way for 10 minutes so that you may have an opportunity to propose to Gwendolen, will you dine with me tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. So shallow.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments. And I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we were a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Aunt Augusta, I'm greatly distressed about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause, I of course cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I am going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It's a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. I seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury's a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice. The improvement in his ailment goes. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday. For I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the programme I've drawn out if you will kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe, is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mama.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines. It has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
I am Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly! It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say that I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No! There is very little music in the name of Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. Well, the only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married to Mr. Worthing?
What? Surely, you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable idea. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn?
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Oh, what wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. blue. Oh, I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Whirling, rise, sir, from his semi-incumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Whirling is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Whirling, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be, it is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Whirling. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage. In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn! The carriage!
Yes, Mamma.
Good. You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has, we work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a clearly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it might prove a serious danger to the upper classes and would lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
Well, I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house, how many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I am afraid I really have none. I am a liberal unionist.
Ah, they count as Tories. Dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. Now, to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
Both? To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born at what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag, a somewhat large brown leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James, or Thomas Cardew, come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to? As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then what you advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I can possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing your only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing. Good morning.
For goodness sake, don't play that dastard tune, now, dear. How idiotic you are!
Didn't you think off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn has refused you? I know it's a way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it is most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a Gorgon. I don't really know what a Gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, now, dear. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people without the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the slightest instinct about when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there is any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algernon?
All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does, that's his.
That's clever.
It's perfectly phrased and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, have you told Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, before the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You would much better say severe chill.
You are sure severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then, my poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn yet about your having an excessively pretty ward who's only just 18?
One doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear fellow, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and dress. You know, it's nearly 7.
Ugh, it always is nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
Well, what shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
Oh, no, I loathe listening.
Well, let us go to a club.
Oh, no, I hate talking.
Well, we might trot round the Empire.
Oh, no, I can't bear looking at things. It is so silly.
What shall we do?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind hard work as long as there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word!
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this sort of thing at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you. The story of your romantic origins, related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Walton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks. I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Bill. Oh, dear Lord. sherry, Lane?
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can put out my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the usual Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl, the only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that is all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only thing that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does. The Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.